This podcast contains mature language. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to a podcast all about running 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. House of Crit would like to formally invite you to join us here, behind the screen.
Alright guys, welcome to another episode of Behind the Screen. I am David.
I'm Eddie.
I'm Paul.
I am Rob.
Awesome. So I have a pretty cool question actually, something that I haven't come across or encountered before because I've only played 2 about level 5, I think is my highest. So I don't know a lot beyond that. And from hearing you guys and other D&D places, it sounds pretty awesome. There's a lot that goes into high level. So on a player's perspective, for those of you who've played, and also the DM perspective, at a high level, how do you guys handle that? How do you set it up? How is that kind of played through? Have you gotten to a high level yet?
I was going to say, Eddie, you start this one.
Highest level I ever played is 7.
Oh,
as a
okay.
player.
So still higher than me. But, yeah, so what would your thoughts are at level 7, and what would you like to see maybe moving forward from that?
Well, once you take into consideration what abilities your players actually play as a level 7, then you start integrating that to see if you can make your story a lot more worthy or take advantage of them. So they can, have fun in order to actually implement those abilities.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, being the youngest DM here, that doesn't really bring too much like a subject matter expert here. So what do you guys think on that?
Oh, the highest level that I've played was 13.
Wow, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
What was it?
Oh, it was a rogue.
Of
course.
Of course it
If
was.
you want me to be honest, if you want me to be honest.
No. You played rogue?
Yeah, a little bit of stabby, just a little bit, not too much. Just
I had
like
12 attacks actually.
Not an egregious amount
it's
at all.
No.
14d6 sneak attack. No, I was just...
Oh, I was like this. Everybody's like, what?
You were like, I attacked dice bag on the table.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like playing Warhammer 40k. Everyone just dumps out piles of d6s. It's like,
starts
give me 10 minutes. I got to figure the combat out.
Play Godzilla and just start taking out miniatures.
It was pretty fun. The DM that I had at the time wasn't... I mean, we were young, so he wasn't super experienced.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like, all right, what do we do now? Well, all right, let's go on a mission to kill all the dragons.
Oh,
And
okay.
I mean, that's...
As you do.
In a dungeon, right?
I mean, when you're like 16, you're like,
Yeah!
I'm going to kill them all.
Yeah.
Then I'm going to eat them.
Of course.
We have to make jerky somehow.
Right.
And, I mean, so that's where we were. I've never run as a DM anything that high. I would probably...
You keep killing players, that's why.
No.
They just keep dying.
Players kill themselves. It's
keep
not up
dying.
to me what you roll.
Oh, that's true.
Don't look at me. How's that in your campaign?
No, you haven't.
No.
How different?
Yeah, about that.
How different would you say it was though playing? Like the difference between level 5, again, where our campaigns have been going to, versus you getting to level 13. How different was that?
For me, I was more emotionally invested
Okay.
because I had the whole backstory. I had, we were taking over, inns and stuff like that, so we were accumulating money. I mean, it was never an issue.
Like a mafia?
No. A mafia
A
doesn't...
cartel?
Mafias don't exist.
It's called the organization.
Yes. It's
Got it.
a family business.
Yeah.
Okay.
If I was ever to run something, I mean, I would think that I would want to homebrew it, to be
Okay.
honest. And I'm not a fan of myself homebrewing, but I don't think there's anything out there that's that high level that would really suit my playstyle.
So, alright, so level 13, do you remember any abilities you had as a rogue in level 13 that you loved using or anything like that?
That's kind of what I was saying, like how different it would be. Obviously, you get a lot more abilities.
it was also a different system.
Okay. What version actually?
I believe that was...
Were you 3?
Edition. No?
3rd edition?
Yeah, I think that was 3rd edition.
Okay.
Wasn't?
I don't think.
I didn't
You
play
were-
with it.
no, but
I mean,
level, you were 16 years old, right?
yeah, I was about that. So No, that was second edition.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, second edition.
Wow. So a whole different gameplay then.
It's a completely different world.
Yeah.
Completely different.
We're not going to do that.
We had to worry about THACO and
No.
like calculus. Just
Yeah, I was going to say recreational
did I
calculus.
hit something? I don't know. Let me bust out my calculator. And you had one that was on a watch that you had to do because if not, you couldn't play Dungeons and Dragons.
Well, thank God for Dungeons and Dragons. It kept Casio in business, didn't it?
More than we're willing to admit.
I mean, coming from a watch connoisseur, I love timepieces, but yeah, I definitely think you guys kept Casio in business
You
for
know,
quite a while.
I mean,
just for
Texas
nostalgia
Instrument was back in the
purposes,
day.
I think
Sure.
I may see if I can find one.
Well,
for
I mean,
next session.
Well, now they're selling for way too much because they're now.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're selling
Like
for
they
quite
used
a
to be
lot.
like $22 at Walmart,
Maybe.
something like that,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
nah.
Now they're 50 to 100
Yeah.
bucks. 'Cause
I'm sure they're an app on
antiques now.
smartwatches now.
No.
They're
Yeah,
antiquated.
but
I'll stick with my fancy dancy smartwatch. It has a calculator too.
Yeah. And you can just yell at Siri the whole time, too.
Yes.
Siri, what is 3 plus 3?
Yeah.
Siri, roll for initiative.
Roll for-
Ooh,
That'd be cool.
Actually, funny thing, you can use Alexas now to like in your sessions, like if you want to digitize everything, you can tell it, hey, if you say something like that, you can program it so lights go a different color, and then music starts and everything. I think it's kind of fun.
I want
I
millennial
don't
real
know
quick.
about that. Yeah, I have Apple stuff, so
Yeah.
I wouldn't use it.
I mean, okay, doesn't mean right.
No, but I mean, you can have Siri roll 3d6, and she'll give you a random number.
Right.
That's actually pretty dope.
I was going to say, speed through things pretty fast at
Yeah.
least.
What about you,
So-
Paul?
Just like Rob, I mean, I played in older systems,
Mm-hmm.
so the game was very different.
Have you DM'd at a high level? What's the highest you've DM'd at?
The highest I DM'd at was, I believe it was, I ran the module Vecna Lives, which was, I think, the final module for second edition. And it starts out, especially looking back at it, the module's pretty much garbage. Like, I don't, like, if everything in life is either a success or a learning experience,
Yes.
Oh, it is.
this thing
Vecna
is a
Lives.
lot of lessons.
That now this book doesn't.
It well, because it's so that it starts out with the story premise is Vecna, the greatest
What?
lich, arch wizard lich demigod of all time. Like, if you need a dark, malevolent force that is eternal in your setting, it's Vecna. And it's about him coming back after, I guess, having previously been destroyed. Memory's a little hazy. But it starts with him killing the Circle of Eight. And if you play D&D long enough, you're relatively familiar with the Circle of Eight from the names of a lot of spells. Autoluke, Mordenkainen, I believe Otto. Their names are spells in the player's handbook. They're like the 8. They were in the original Greyhawk setting. They were the 8 greatest wizards of all time. And the module starts out with you as the DM handing these pre-done max level character sheets for all these great wizards to your players.
And they're like, no way.
And then by pure DM fiat, by pure DM horseshit, you, the DM, role-playing Vecna, kill every fucking one of them. So it's like, welcome to the game. You're all dead.
You're murdered.
Yeah. Like,
Wow.
it's one of those great examples where it's like, if you have a really, really great idea for a narrative story,
don't do it.
what I want to do is I want to give you a pencil, a pad of paper, and a copy of Microsoft Word and go write your book.
Wow.
Keep it the hell out of D&D. But with that module, my players got frustrated. We never got past it because it starts out with a pile of horse shit.
Imagine, I got a level 20.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All
Who's
excited.
that?
And it's just freaking atomized
So they
from
just
the get.
like bombard you with spells and everything. You're like, yeah, I'm not gonna die.
Yeah,
Yeah, fooled you.
pretty much. Yeah, like you hand wave them.
2,000 HP
to-
just for this encounter.
Yeah. Exactly. You just point like, and your character, this epic level 20 wizard for whom there are spells named after, he's dead now.
What edition is that?
I believe that was the final module published for second edition.
That means that they have
AD.
level 10 and 11 level spells also available,
I think
which
so.
are world shattering and yet
You die.
Yeah, and yeah, it's like, here's the tease. Here's the tease. Oh, I'm sorry. Anyways,
It's like, is that my
Yeah.
level 20 character?
Hey guys, you want to start all over from 0 now?
straight up, that's really kind of what
So
it's.
the big bad
Okay.
guy casts wish. I wish all of you were dead.
Yay!
This is great. Let's
God,
play
that
again.
sounds
Yeah,
amazingly
it's super.
terrible.
It's super, super fun. But to bring it over to 5th edition, I have played up to a 5th level character myself, and I've run a campaign, which didn't get very far, again, that could have gone to level 20. Which was Dungeon of the Mad Mage. That's designed to go all the way from level 5 to level 20. About a third of the way through it,
Eddie's gone.
I wish.
a variety of people,
May.
for whom I may or may not be familiar with, got turned in the compost a couple of times, and then they pissed off Hallister himself.
I mean, to be noticed by Hallister, though.
Yeah, I mean, to your credit, you did get the big guy's attention.
Good job, you're dead.
And then he
And-
wished us
And he wished you back to first level.
Oh my god.
to non-existence,
yeah.
basically.
So
No, I wa-
technically, when my character left, you guys didn't die.
Yeah, technically
Your
none of
character
those
never
characters
left.
actually died if time got rewound that way.
Yeah.
It's fine. It's just the hurtfulness of the possibilities.
Well, everybody knows. I mean, I've just been exonerated, so no.
Good job.
It's still your future possible person.
In one of
character.
those timelines.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask this too, because I mean, obviously, time is one of the biggest factors with level. So, at that point, up until you get wished away or just completely annihilated,
Can you imagine
how
getting
much
to level
time? Again, coming from a newer player, and a lot of the new players out there might not know, but like, what kind of time does that take? Months, years of years? Like, what does that look like?
That would, I think, really depend on the DM and the game that the DM's running. Because, like, if you're running a game, like at a local gaming store, where you have kind of a pool of players who show up,
Right.
like every so many times they attend, they get a level bump
Gotcha.
from that. So, I mean, that could go, like, let's say it's every 3 sessions you bump a level. So then there's 20 levels, let's say three sessions. So if it's a weekly game, that's 60 weeks. That's just over a year. If they show up every
It's
week.
still a decent amount of time.
So
what about for yours,
Yeah.
for instance, when you guys all came into this annihilation mode? How long did it take to get to that point?
You mean for that crack ass module that I ran? Well, they
Yeah.
started at level 20. So that was
Oh, okay, good. Okay, cool.
about 4 hours.
Okay, cool.
Before they finally were like,
So it's not
"The
as so
hell with
upsetting
this
that
shit."
you guys didn't be like, all right, well, we took 2 years to get here.
No,
Now
no,
that's
no.
gone. Like literally, etch your sketch, and it's gone.
So my homebrew.
That would be a rage quit. I don't think I'd ever play again.
Yeah.
I don't even know what I would
Can you
feel.
imagine? It's like, yeah, finally level 20. Yeah, you're dead.
I'm like, yep, I'll flip the table and I would have walked out.
Monopoly style.
Yeah,
Oh,
Yeah. The only way to properly end a game of Monopoly is just throw it in off the table.
I would feel some type of way for sure.
Yeah.
We
That's-
had about 7 or 8 sessions on my homebrew, and you guys are almost level 6 or 7, so that means that it's pretty quick.
Yeah, I mean, the lower levels will tick pretty fast,
Mhm.
and then they start to kind of slow down a bit. But one of the things with 5th edition is they intentionally did something in the design. So I guess it's a feature of the system, which is they flattened the math in 5th edition. The mathematical values of things don't change very,
Right.
very greatly. I mean, for instance, you look at the proficiency bonus. Level 1, you start with a +2 proficiency bonus. The proficiency bonus of a level 20 is only +6. So the numbers aren't going to scale super high.
Right.
This is a great feature because A, you don't have to do recreational trig to figure out if you hit or not. But at the same time, too, monsters can be more useful for longer stretches of time for the DM. So that you don't have to have like 15 different versions of Goblin in the monster manual. Or like, this Goblin's good for characters that are 1st to 3rd level. This Goblin's good for 4th to 6th. Like that kind of crap, which used to be in some of the older books.
A
You
lot of
don't need that.
MMOs do this still, though. You actually see a big, great variance of like creatures depending on the level that you actually are. For
Yeah.
slimes at the beginning, rabbits, things like that.
Yeah, and the issue that creates is number bloat, which, I mean, the worst possible offender I can think of that is World of Warcraft, where the numbers would just get so ridiculous after a while. I've thank God been cured of that addiction for some time, but I remember a couple of times like they had to like smash everybody's numbers back down when an expansion came out.
They still do it every expansion.
Yeah, and it's just
Like what Apple does whenever a new iPhone comes.
only it doesn't cost you thousands, and then they steal your adapters.
Yes, it does.
Oh, God, I know.
But with 5th edition, you don't have the issue of the numbers getting way too out of control. So stuff is more useful for much longer. Yeah. So like the players don't have to constantly upgrade gear all the time, too. So you can stay more in keeping with your character. Really the only thing that scales noticeably with levels is hit points. That's really about the only thing.
So if you were to DM something at that level, what would it kind of be like as far as now doing it 5th edition instead of doing it in 2nd or 3rd edition? How would it be? Would you start them out at like level 10, level 15? Would you go into a one-shot? Would you do it like a full campaign but starting at high level? What are your thoughts on DMing it at that high variant?
Wouldn't a really good idea for you to test it out? For example, somebody like me, that's highest level character 7.
Or me.
I would do one-shots. I would do one-shots, test out how they work out, what are the like idiosyncrasies that are gonna help you like figure out later on, like what's gonna be okay. So this could work for the story, and this is how they could develop it.
And
so,
how does that vary? So like let's say we did a one shot, since we're talking about that. How would that vary your DMing and versus doing it now at a low level? Would there be just a lot more story? Would you do a homebrew preferably, or would you run a module that you would kind of just follow and say, look, let's just jump into this at level 20?
If we were to do like say a one shot, I don't think that I would invest that much time and energy into backstories and what have you.
Right.
I would definitely just pick a modular, just run them.
Okay, so pick a modular, create your characters, just deck them out with what they have at that level, and run it.
I mean, in all honesty, if you're we say, well, I want to start at level 15. Everybody roll their characters. You're not emotionally invested in your character.
Right.
If you're at level 1 and you make it to like level 13, level 14, level 15, that's something completely different. You have history. You have a bond with that character.
Plus time.
Yeah.
Again, probably years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, just to be like, I just rolled a level 20 wizard. He's just pen and paper.
Right.
That's nothing to me.
It's like buying the new WoW and they just give you a level 80, right? You just jump in and play.
Yeah, you're like, oh, this
was
is
that
fun.
A death knight?
I mean, this
yes, it was a death
knight. This is
Was
absolutely
it a
ridiculous.
level 70?
Not anymore.
Oh my god.
Don't you put that evil on me.
I would never.
No.
I would never.
We're out.
Wow.
But I like that. I like that whole aspect to it because then you get to experience what that's like. It's also kind of cool because it's like I don't want to call it cheating, but now you've jumped into, we get all these abilities and spells and we can do so much. We're going to die, we know that. But it's...
But also with the problem with that,
Only
with you and Andy, you have never played, even Paul, you haven't played a character that at a high level. A lot of information, especially for newer players, it's going to be overwhelming.
Yeah.
Like, okay, well here's a book on everything that you can do. Knock yourself out.
Right.
It's.
Now let me ask on that, because of the fact that you're right. Like Eddie and I won't know, and it's going to be kind of overwhelming, especially if we pick like a spellcaster. Then it's like, holy crap! We have here you go. This is what we're going to play with today. The whole book.
You have 20 options.
Yeah.
For each encounter.
So how would you start it off? Like first couple episodes, is it slow range where you're kind of like feeling it out with smaller mobs, and then you're just getting the feel?
That should
of
be a build.
I would do something individual with each person.
Okay.
It's okay. So just like you do a session 0 with any other campaign.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be okay. Well, David, me and you are going to talk about, this is what your spell list. This is what you can do. And I would like to do a one-on-one encounter, just so you're familiar with,
That's
what
a
you're
really
doing.
cool idea.
And then I would do the same thing with Eddie, same thing with Paul. Probably not Paul so much because Paul.
Wow.
Paul's a god of DMD. I know.
Well, no, I wouldn't quite go that far.
Wow, no.
No.
Instructor on instructions.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I mean, he's read the material. He knows the mechanics.
Right.
He knows
all the spells.
how to min-max a character.
No.
Yeah,
Yes.
Yes.
Well, I don't know about the spell part, but I definitely know he knows how to.
No,
min-max
I've
the character.
intentionally not learned the spells so that when a player at my table goes, I cast this, and then they stare at me blankly,
What
I
does that
look
do?
right back at them and go, and what does that do?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, no.
The homework's yours, pal.
This
thought
is
that was
this
a lie.
is one that I made up. No, but I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, say if you were going to play like a ranger at level 20, you've already done research on it.
Right.
So-
One would hope.
Yeah.
I know, but I'm saying
I like that.
As
It's like a training
between
ground.
me and you. Yeah,
I like that.
I mean, fine,
Well-
we can still run a Rob and Paul session. It's okay.
So how
I
does
did
that?
not mean to offend.
So what does that look like again? Because I mean, obviously with a module, it's already pre-laid out and determined to the nth degree of the beginning. And what would you do for a homebrew? Would you kind of start them out in a town and say, look, okay, there's these quests that you guys can choose from, or do we just kind of walk out of a tavern, we're level 20 and ready to just kick some ass?
Never know.
And-
I started my own castle. Going to your guys' castle.
My castle will talk to your castle.
Yeah. Everybody starts in the good place.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you guys have amnesia and you wake up.
Level 20.
God.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
I don't have
Unfortunately-
to.
unfortunately,
In jail.
yes.
I'm like, what is that jail made out of?
Yeah.
For a level 20 character.
Yeah, do we have a wizard? What plane of existence is the jail on?
Basically.
Oh man.
Yeah, it gets extra planar when you get to
Well,
level 20.
that's
or
kind of
something.
what I'm getting at is that there is so much difference from where we are getting to level 5 versus starting out at level 20. Now there's a whole worlds of difference. So I like that aspect of the training ground and kind of playing through, figuring out how the hell does your character even attack at that level. Because it's like, I mean, there's times where we're playing and I forget, oh crap, I could have done this attack. I have this spell slot still left. So I like that, being able to utilize that.
Because I mean, there'd be nothing worse. Like, say, even if we, we're not filming, we're just playing just for us to goof off.
Yeah.
You say, oh well, there's, all right, it's your turn. What do you want to do? And then now everybody else is waiting 5-10 minutes for you to run through everything because you're still unsure. You're not really ready for it.
Right.
And then it's Eddie's turn, and then Eddie takes another 5-10 minutes. Paul takes another 5-10 minutes. 1 6-second run of combat ends up being like 45 minutes. I'm like, well, now it's the bad guy's turn. And they come over and they just start demolishing you, and now you're bleeding. Now, what do you want to do? All right, hold on one more second.
Yeah. True.
Shield.
Yeah, it's
Pally out.
it's running a high level one shot is not something I would do with players who were inexperienced. I just wouldn't. It's just
He's
not.
looking at us. Yeah, I know. I was like, all right.
It's
okay.
but you guys are not inexperienced. I mean,
Oh, you're so sweet.
From time to time, yeah, I have a carrot and a stick.
You
for
can
it.
be gentle. Okay.
I can be.
He's your DM.
Yeah.
We won't let anybody know.
He's
Thank
your
you.
DM.
I do have a reputation to uphold.
Awesome.
But the basic mechanics of how your character plays never actually change.
Right.
You just get more options.
Right.
So, if they're a brand new player, they're still learning the most simple options. But, I mean, like a level 20 fighter still does what a level 1 fighter does. They have a weapon, they're going to plant it in somebody's face as hard as they can.
Move.
The only thing that really changes for the fighter in that dynamic is by level 20, their multi-attack lets them attack multiple times in a turn. But the concept is the same. Your character, I believe by level 3, the core of your character through all the classes, the core is there.
Right.
So by level 3, level 4, if you played a character up to level 5, you know what that thing does.
Yeah.
You just, again, you get more options to it. And largely that comes down to spellcasters and the amount of options that they have. But anyone who plays routinely a spellcaster, typically they'll have kind of like a loadout of spells that they will just favor.
Right.
So even though they do have a large assortment of options, they kind of already have a system in place for what they're going to pull out most of the time. But then also, too, a person who wants to play like a wizard, for instance. Wizards have access to more spells at any given point in time than any other class in the game. Because they can just pack that spell book with everything in it, and the wizard spell list is the biggest list in the game. The juice for somebody playing a wizard is that spell list, and learning those spells and learning what they can do. That is the core of the class. Like if you, in the player's handbook, like you crack open the wizard subchapter, and you look at what the different subclasses can do, what the main core features of the class are, it looks pretty stripped down. You look at it and you're like, this is all that there is to a wizard. And it's because that's missing the core feature. which is that giant pile of spells.
Right.
That's the core of that particular class. So if somebody wanted to rock up, if I was running a high level one shot, for instance, I started everyone at 15. If somebody was to pick a high level spell caster, I know they're already doing their homework because that's why they picked that thing in the first place.
Cool. And so I'm
They're
guessing on a one shot, you're eliminating a lot of the lore. You're eliminating. It's just going to be all like actions and battling, right? There's not a lot of story behind it.
Yeah, I mean, a one-shot at any level really is the same thing because it's intended to be played in a single session. So you're talking 5 encounters at the most.
Okay.
And then encounter means anything that stops the forward progress of the story, not necessarily combat.
Right.
So it could be like, here's a social encounter that sets up the situation. Here's an exploration encounter that gets you from where you started to where it's going down. Here's one combat encounter.
Okay.
Here's another social encounter. Here's the final combat
So there
encounter.
still is a
That's it.
guideline that you're still following.
Yeah,
throughout.
there's usually always the same kind of rough outline for everything. It doesn't really matter about level.
Cool. I like that.
All right, let me ask you guys this, because I never actually done this. How do you multi-class, or how do you work with the players in order if they want to multi-class? And what do you think might be some good combinations? Like, I know you haven't multi-class either, but you're very experienced DMs.
So wait, before you guys, so for those of us who might not completely know what that is, what is multi-classing?
Multi-classing is when you take levels in more than one class.
Okay.
So, let's say you start as a fighter, and then you take a level, let's say, in sorcerer.
Ooh.
Um,
That sounds
I mean,
cool.
It does.
that-
Would it
that-
work? I don't know.
That's an okay combination. If you're going like from the perspective of min-maxing, that's not really sharing attributes. But depending on what the story has in store, I mean, that might be something to do. Typically, when people multi-class, they do tend to combine classes with similar ability score bonuses.
Okay. Now, real quick, before we dive into that, is that like at level 20? Is that like almost everyone has multi-classed? Is that like a smart
Not
thing to
necessarily.
do? Does it
Not
make you more
necessarily,
powerful? Okay.
because the trade-off with multi-classing is if you take levels in more than one class, none of your classes individually will hit level 20.
Gotcha.
So whatever the capstone ability is for the class, this thing will never hit.
So you can spread yourself a little too thin.
You can't. It's
Absolutely.
it's
Yeah.
very easy to make.
So at lower levels, it's a lot more fun because now you're kind of just playing with different abilities.
Yeah, I mean, especially at low levels, a lot of the classes, their core abilities are pretty front-loaded.
Yeah.
The core abilities are typically found in the first 3 levels.
Okay.
Some of the classes, too, their capstones, for lack of a better word, are crap. So you may not care to even hit them. Like, I think, for instance, the Sorcerer, which, for multiple reasons, the Sorcerer could probably use a decent rewrite. But the capstone ability for the Sorcerer is at level 20, you, I believe, regain 4 sorcery points.
Yay.
That's it. That gets you 2 level 1 spell slots back.
Sparklers.
Yeah, neato. Yeah. So it's like if you're playing a Sorcerer,
Right. What's that?
what the hell do you care if you hit level 20? Because that's kind of junk.
Yeah.
But then there are other ones like the Paladin. The Paladin's level 20 capstone abilities are pretty amazing. They can become kind of avatars of their oath.
Oh, do tell. Interesting.
It is found in Chapter 3 of the Player's Handbook, sir.
Fantastic.
This baby right here.
Read
Yes. Yes, please, dear God, read it.
So, once you start multi-classing as a fighter, let's say you start as a fighter, then you continue doing, let's say, rogue or something like that. Can you come back and actually start like classing up, leveling up as a fighter again?
You can. First and foremost, multi-classing is a variant rule. It's not part of the standard rules, so you have to check with your DM if they are going to allow that variant in the campaign.
Huh.
You never know until you ask.
You can certainly try.
Of course, you can certainly
Where's the
try.
dice?
Roll it. Nope. You roll diamonds.
Just rolling dice.
Yeah.
That was a 1 in real life, gentlemen.
Hey, you know what? There's glory in the attempt. But
Fantastic.
typically, at least for myself, multi-classing, unlike most of the other variant rules, I'm usually pretty okay with, provided there's a story reason to multi-class.
Got it. Okay.
Because, I mean, some of the classes in the game, if you think of them as achieved through some sort of training.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, the fighter, the monk, the rogue. They are what they are through years of study and practice and work to be that thing.
Right.
So could somebody multi-class into those classes, provided there's a story reason someone has been teaching them, they've been studying this type of thing? Sure, there are other classes where they kind of start as whatever they are. Like, for instance, sorcerers are born sorcerers. Typically, I mean, you may have like, for instance, if you have a dragon bloodline sorcerer, it could be that your character of 10th level or whatever was fighting a dragon, was bathed in the flames of the dragon, nearly died, and in like kind of Captain Marvel fashion, like absorbed some of the energy, and that character wanted to multi-class sorcerer. Okay, you've given me this like kernel to grow a story hook on.
Okay.
You may a late bloomer sorcerer.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like I'm 21, nothing yet.
Yeah, they got to it eventually.
Now, do you have to tie in something that's kind of like it fits? Like, I can't just be like, I'm a paladin rogue. I'm stealthy and clanky at the same time.
A paladin with sneak attack.
Sneak attack pally.
Well,
Divine smite at the same time.
Yeah, you smite,
Stabby,
and
smite,
sneak
smite.
attack. That's
So
that's
it does
pretty
have
vicious.
to kind of tie in a little bit, because again, you said like the lore of learning and stuff like that.
Yeah, from like my table again, there would need to be some sort of story reason to kick that off. Like if somebody hit a certain point with their class, and then something happened where they swore an oath of vengeance because something traumatic happened to them, they lost somebody, something like that. Now you could get into paladin territory, because the paladin's powers come from the conviction of the oath that they swear.
Right.
So it's like, okay, there's a story hook. Sure, you start progressing as paladin at that point. If somebody was just like came to me and was like, oh, these mechanics are really, really cool, or this can make this like crazy type design character, I'd be like, you got to sell me a little bit better here.
Right.
I'm not playing a game of strictly mechanics. We're
At
playing
20.
a story-based game. Yeah. They're like, but I ordered pizza. I'm like, go on.
And meatball subs. Well,
Yes. Well.
you've just leveled.
What would be the most ridiculous multi-class that you can think of?
Rogue paladin.
Rogue Paladin is pretty vicious.
Yes!
Rogue
That's a little out there.
Go me!
The most.
That would be insane, though.
I mean, moral-wise, taking that out of the
I
context.
summon a steed and I take off, and then I stabby everything.
Like, taking story reasons out of it, the most vicious thing I can think of off the top of my head is.
No, the most ridiculous.
The most ridiculous
Yeah.
would be probably a paladin bard.
Really?
I was going with bard druid.
Bard druid
Well, no.
sings in bird songs
As a bird.
as a bird. Yeah, really gets into the performance.
Then we put him in a cage.
So that you can, like, some of those busted stuff, only because it doesn't really work out great, would be the classic fighter wizard. Just because 5th edition does not handle the concept of a gish very well at all. The concept of a fighter magic user, which was a pretty big mainstay in 3rd edition. The closest, it really is the paladin in 5th edition, but the paladin is a divine caster, whereas a proper gish is an arcane caster. So, yeah, somebody trying that. There is the Blade Song wizard subclass, but that's kind of busted and not in a great way.
Well, there are also minimum requirements that you'd have to make. I mean, if I was a fighter and my intelligence was an 11, I could not be a wizard because I don't meet the minimum of 13.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, you also have to have your stats high enough to, if multiclassing is a variant rule allowed by your DM, there are rules specifically for multiclassing. That's the first half of Chapter 6 in the Player's Handbook, is the multiclassing variant rules, where first of all, so the DM has to be okay with it. That's number one. And then number two, the classes have minimum requirements to multiclass into. Typically being you need a 13 ability score in the class you're trying to multiclass into's primary ability. So for instance, fighters, it would be strength. For bards, I believe it's charisma. Things of that nature. Some of the classes have an or to them, where it's you have to have a 13 in this ability or a 13 in this ability. I don't think there's any
Fighters
ands.
like that because you can.
It's strength or dex
Dex.
for the fighter.
Is it common? So I've never seen it happen in again, going up to level 5. So is it kind of an uncommon thing for someone to multi-class during a playthrough, or is it?
It's really table dependent, to be
Okay.
honest. I mean, like a lot of like players who've played for a long time who are power gamers, I've noticed a lot of them really like it because they want to kind of stack as many aces on their side as possible.
Druid Barbarian.
Druid Barbarian is a
Nice.
pretty nasty one. If you did 3 levels in Barbarian
That would be amazing.
and you took
Ridiculous.
oh, it's insane because if you do 3 levels in Barbarian and then you take Path of the Totem Warrior and you choose the Bear Totem,
Right.
starting at level 3, when you rage, you are resistant to all forms of damage except psychic damage, and then you can turn into a bear
Oh, perfect.
if you progress in Druid for the rest of it.
Hashtag winning.
Yeah,
And then, as in bear form, until you drop down to 0 hit points in bear, then guess what? You're back to whatever race you are.
Wow.
yeah. So you're basically this almost ever regenerating pile of hit points that, while you're raging, reduces all incoming damage by half.
It's ridiculous.
Yes, it's pretty broken.
So
Are we gonna play?
Muhammad.
Yeah, I see these two just like, yes, do go on.
I mean, I
What
think
can I
that's the
do?
question. So
Now, onto the both of you, have you guys ever multi-classed? And if you did, what were they?
I designed actually the Barbarian.
I like even there's a name to it.
It never got unleashed at Rob's table, but it was a character because I did have a character who
Stayed in the cave.
pretty much
one shot.
Yeah, I had a character that made it to level 5 over the course of the story, but at that point, that character was done with the events because he was only there to complete this one objective. He wasn't like part of the ragtag group.
Yeah.
And so, for story reasons, this other character was going to be brought in as kind of like the liaison to get the rest of the group into the rest of Rob's story.
As he goes like this.
As he turns into a wrecking ball.
I don't know, Rob. You want to be a paladin rogue?
Man,
I swear, I would love to do a
Oh
fun
my
one
God.
shot where
I would-
we just do ridiculous stuff.
I think we should.
that would be
If you guys want to see that, please let us know.
hilarious.
That would be awesome. I could totally see you being a dwarf paladin rogue.
Yeah, mouth breathing, rogue.
Mirth facing, just murder facing everything. Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna sneak attack with my dual warhammers.
We can call it freak show.
Good.
We'll put spikes on them for you so
Yeah.
they can still stabby stab.
You just ring their bell, man. Just, hello!
Yeah.
That'd be a catchphrase.
Have you multi-classed before?
I've done the druid barbarian, which is super fun. I've tried the fighter wizard in previous
Wow.
editions, just because, I mean, there was, okay, well, here's a book for fighters, here's a book for wizards. You know, I'm like, oh, great, I can just make my own book.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much fun. Not so much fun.
He took up
No,
the
I
spine of.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
It used to be an ungodly amount of homework.
The one that I've always wanted to try was
On top of high school homework.
a bard rogue.
A bar. Really?
Ooh.
Yeah, I think that would be a lot of fun.
Would that be kind of like The Witcher? The what's this?
Oh,
one?
Dandelion?
Is it? Oh
Yeah.
my god.
Well, that's who he is in the games. I think it's Jaskar
Ja-
in the books and the show.
Jasper? Jasper?
Yeah,
Whatever.
Yeah, I don't know.
But yeah, so in the
Yeah,
series,
that guy.
That guy.
So it seems like, though, that from what you guys are saying, a bard is kind of a good like baseline for a lot of multi-classing.
Depending on what school you go with, I mean, there's just so many different options that you can do.
So if you do your homework right, he could be a good baseline to kind of throw onto some other, because I mean, you both have mentioned different multi-classes of a bard.
Yeah, I mean, the bard is one of the classes where charisma is one of its defining ability scores that power its abilities, and in 5th edition, charisma is kind of the catch-all for a lot of classes because for paladins,
sorcerer.
bards, sorcerer, and warlock, charisma, if not being the number one ability to favor, it practically ties for the number one. Because with like paladins, it's strength charisma. For bards, it's dex charisma.
Could you multi-class like a
Warforged.
Warforged?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a Warforged is just a race.
Okay.
That's no different than like elf or dwarf.
Got
No,
it.
what kind of Warforged?
Yeah, that would be interesting. Because I liked how you were that type of character you did one of our campaigns we played through.
Oh, the artificer, yeah.
As
He
a-
was fun.
As a DM, I hated that character.
I bet you did.
He brought a Gatling gun on top of a dog.
Well, it's okay. As a dying character out in the battlefield, when you have your brethren behind a door, just pew 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 pew, I'm out of here. Yeah, it's also not the greatest either.
Yeah,
but-
Warforged.
Perpetually at 3/4 cover. Yeah.
yeah, you have a steampunk Iron Man running through.
Yeah, I was about to say, I mean, honestly, the character was inspired by War Machine. I'm like, oh, you mean with the artillerist subclass for the artificer, if I have a firearms proficiency, I can be War Machine.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do this.
In all honesty, that was actually my fault as well because I said, yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah, you were supposed to say, but you can certainly try.
No, I'm like, Dad, what a great idea. You should do that. I'm like, wait a second, that's my campaign.
Hold on.
You forgot.
I was like, oh, okay.
I hate being friends.
Now on a DM perspective,
Womp womp.
does that change a whole lot? As a DM, when you bring in a character now that has tied in some type of story to multi-class, does that change a whole lot in the DMing realm?
It could complement.
It depends on the reasoning of the multi-class.
Well, okay, so once it's happened, you've agreed with the reasoning, the story fits. Now, how does that change bringing them into a group or bringing them in on a DM perspective? How does that differ?
It can cause some balancing issues if you approach your game design from the perspective that balance is important.
Okay.
I don't necessarily subscribe to that train of thought that balance is ultimately important, because the closer you get to a perfect balance on things, the more same-ish everything gets.
Okay.
Not to say that I just like wildly throw stuff together and be like, I don't know, you guys are the players, you figure it out. But
Thank you for not.
That's my department, yeah.
yeah, that's a Rob campaign. But
You're welcome.
the thing with multi-class characters is they do typically tend to be far more powerful than single-class characters, at least initially, and especially at the low levels. At the high levels, things go off the rails regardless of who's playing what.
Right.
But you can get some pretty sick low-level characters with a min-maxed, like power game centric style multi-class. So you do have to be aware that like this one player at your table is going to play something that can seriously wreck some shit, whereas the other players who are not using
Everybody's like,
the other players may not be delivering. For instance, like if you've got one player at your table who's a new player, right, and they're playing something they think is pretty badass, but they're playing with a more experienced player who's got this thing like tricked out through multi-classing and whatnot. Like, there's a danger that that new player might feel overshadowed and might start to feel some kind of way, where it's like, I'm playing this badass, I thought, until this jerk showed up.
Right.
You know.
He's only doing like, he's level 4 and he's knocking out, 45 points of damage per round.
is that your rogue?
Yes. No, I mean, I can understand completely where that would be from a new player's perspective, where that'd be frustrating.
Is there like a
But then again, also as the DM, you'd have to throw things a little bit harder at the party to kind of balance that out.
Okay.
It's like, here's 5 goblins, and then you're like, well, okay, Tink, you're done, Tink, you're done, Tink, you're done.
or a whole bunch of bugbears?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, you could flood the room with bugbears.
Oh, okay.
yeah, I mean,
Could you?
that sounds like a horrible, I don't think anybody should do that.
I don't
No.
think so. I
No,
think
not
it's a
at all.
bad idea.
Everybody just like,
That sounds really
Ridiculous.
bad.
Yeah, everyone suddenly has a 1,000-yard stare.
Is there a good like murder healer type class, so like a cleric that went cleric rogue or something along the lines that could have been like
murder
They can-
healer?
yeah,
Murder
like,
healer?
They literally like stab,
I like
stab,
that.
stab. I heal myself. Stab,
Well,
stab,
I mean,
stab.
there is the death cleric,
Okay.
but I mean that's just a cleric.
Because I'm kind of thinking. I mean, again, going back to like the WoW days. I mean, Retribution Paladins can still heal and do a slight bubble, so they're kind of like a murder healer because they're out themselves like just murdering things, and the little damage they do take, they're like,
So
it's
cleric,
gone.
that's tank?
Almost not tank, but still like a stabby rogue.
But even still, in
DPS.
D&D, there's not really a tank.
No, that's what I'm saying. Not tank, but like DPS, where they're just doing a ton of damage, but they're out there. They don't have the armor. They don't have the ability to take a lot of hits. So that way, when they do, heal up and then go back out and murder again.
Cleric.
Cleric.
Pretty much.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's...
So what happened? Just kidding. You actually did really well. Just had to throw it out.
We should do a kill count per episode.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then we'll see who actually fell more often.
I don't know. Are we taking into account the other campaigns too?
I mean,
Are we pulling the graveyards
No,
out?
just in this one.
No,
Yeah.
just this one.
Yeah, I was about to
Just
say.
this one.
Sorry,
just
Lost
this
Mines of
one.
Fandelver.
Just this one.
Yeah,
Okay.
you start
Check out
fresh,
our
man.
campaign in
Yeah.
Lost Mines of Fandelver, by the way.
No, the thing is, the way that, to bring it back to kind of balancing game design, with 5th edition, there's no way to heal through damage like one would think
Like a
to do
necromancer?
in MMO.
Well,
That's reverse healing.
Yeah.
That's a doctor who's either very, very late or right on time, depending on their perspective. But the damage output of everything in 5th edition greatly would outpace any healing output anybody would have. So, like I said, that's why you don't have defined roles like you're the healer,
Right.
you're the tank, because also there's no threat mechanic
Yeah.
in D&D,
Well,
so
it's
you
also-
can't tank.
It's spell slots, so once they're out, they're gone.
Yeah, once they're done, they're done.
Yeah.
You know, so it's everything kind of becomes a war of attrition. How fast can you take when one side take the other down?
Because there's no like mana or magic that you're replenishing. You're just going through with your spell slots regardless.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like I said, that type of thinking
Doesn't
in
really
5th
fit.
edition doesn't work. Like 4th edition had stuff like that,
Okay.
but 4th edition was a radically different game than 5th.
Gotcha.
So you can't find something to do specifically that, but a lot of classes do have some sort of internal healing mechanism as like a clutch. You know, if they get in a bad way, they can give themselves some type of temporary boost. They can, by like a thread, they can save an ally type of thing. But the trick really is with every encounter, drop the opponents as fast as possible. So that's why with multiclassing, a lot of people tend to go for these damage heavy, almost go Nova type builds, particularly why people multiclass when they make these min-max things. They'll take Hexblade for Warlock. It's one of the most common things used for multiclassing. Paladin is another one that's very, very commonly used because they can just drop every spell slot they have in a massive smite bomb and just nuke whatever they're fighting. The trick with DMing not against, because again, that
With it.
in DMing for
Right.
to facilitate a fun gaming session for something like that
Right.
is if they are constantly going Nova, then you have to challenge them in non-combat ways. Like they've blown all their resources and you're right in front of the dungeon, they're tapped. Okay, well, the dungeon's still there, it's still full of opponents, and you still have your objective. So now, how's this blown character going to manage this without their resources?
Right.
You know,
Long rest.
Inside the dungeon?
Yeah.
I think we
you
already
can
talked about that,
certainly
right?
try.
You can see
you
that.
know.
no, not inside, just right outside.
Just
Right
right,
outside.
there.
Yeah.
Right there at the cellar door.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you
If
hope,
all
like
three
hell,
of us
there's no
stay on
such thing as a
top of it,
patrol.
we'll be right.
Right. What is that?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, you just you shift how you think about designing things to not, like I said, create an adversarial situation, but just what is the weak points of a character like that, and how do I cater something interesting for those weak points? Because they'll find fun ways to use their good stuff. You know, it's coming up on come at them sideways is really the trick with a multi-class character. But you have to also to see one in action, because you can create some crazy combos. There's no way for one person to think of all of them.
Right.
So especially if it was like in an ongoing campaign with a multi-class character, I'd let them kind of run willy-nilly a little bit to really kind of get a measure of not only what it can do, but then how the player's favoring handling it. Because even if you know, print 2 copies of the same character, hand them to 2 different people, they'll pilot it 2 different ways. So there's a lot to think about, which is why, thankfully, it's a variant rule. It's not standard. If you feel confident enough to try to handle one at your table, I say go for it.
Yeah.
Especially if you have a good story reason.
Okay.
But with the rest of the variant rules, as a DM, especially for new DMs, my recommendation is actually try the game without them and see if you are actually really missing anything.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, you guys are not allowed multi-class in my home room.
We'll see.
Aw, my barbarian's just gonna stay at home then.
Oh.
Nope, I told you no.
Well,
You told me yes.
maybe
I mean, when are you gonna do it? It's almost out. It's almost
whenever we
done.
play. Well, let us know if you guys multi-class. Have you guys ever done it before? If it's something you guys are into, we would love to hear what you guys have to say. So just leave us comments and let us know.
Like and subscribe right below.
Yeah.